What's up everyone, today we are going to integrate Razopay payment gateway in our Android app, and I'm going to show you step by step how we can integrate into our Android app. So first of all, we're going to create an empty activity, and I would gonna name my app Razorpay payment gateway. So I'm going to code it in Kotlin, and I'm going to create this project. So before we start coding in our Android app, we would gonna need to create a Firebase project, and I'm going to name this Razopay. So basically we are creating a Firebase project to create an order ID from server, because without the order ID we cannot proceed with our Razopay payment gateway. So we are going to use Firebase functions to create a backend function which would generate an order ID and which we would pass it on to our Razopay SDK. So the project is ready, and the first thing I'm going to do is upgrade my project, and I'm going to upgrade it to the Blaze plan, because without the Blaze plan we cannot use Firebase functions. So I'm just going to add a custom font here and just purchase it. So yeah, my billing quota was full, so I had to restore my old project as I cannot upgrade my new project to the Blaze plan. So I'll work on this project only. So let's begin. First we're going to go to VS Code, and I have created a folder which is called Razopay Firebase. So what I'm going to do is open a new terminal here, and I'm going to type Firebase in it. So those of you who don't know what is Firebase in it, it is basically a Firebase CLI which I have installed on my laptop. So you just have to search for Firebase CLI and install it. So now I'm going to use functions here and just press enter, and I'm going to use an existing project. So check it out, this is the name of my old project which was upgraded to Blaze plan, and I'm going to use JavaScript here, and I'm going to install the dependencies now. So I'll choose yes. Okay, so it has created a one folder here which is called functions, and now what I'm going to do is install Razopay no dependency. So this is the command to install from Node package manager, and I'm just going to paste it here and click enter. Okay, I'm also going to install these dependencies in my functions folder. So I'm going to redirect to the functions folder. So I'm going to write cd functions, and now I'm inside my function directory. So I'm going to type in again npm install Razopay. Okay, so the installation part is done. Now I'm going to move ahead, and now it's saying to create an instance of Razopay. So I'm just going to copy this, so this is our Firebase function which would contain our backend code, and I'm going to rename this. So this is the name of our function, and I'm going to rename this to create a Razorpay order. Okay, so I'm going to remove these lines, I'm going to paste the one I copied, and I'm going to create a constant here which would be known as Razorpay, and it would be require Razopay. Okay, so here I'm going to enter my key ID and secret key, which would be provided by the Razopay. So I'm not going to write it straight away, I'm just going to hide it, and I'll just continue with the code. So next we need to create a variable which would contain options. So this will contain amount, currency and receipt. So I'm just going to copy this thing and paste it here, and amount would be in a query form, so I would just write request.query.amt. So amt is just a short form of amount, and the currency would be INR, and the receipt could be anything. You can enter an extra query too, but I'm just going to keep it simple here. And so when the order is created, it is posted to the console, but we need a response. So what I'm going to write is response.json, and this would be order ID, and it would be order.id. So I'm going to add an error handling also. So if error not equal to null, then I'm going to post a response in JSON format, which would be error, and it will contain error. But if it is null, then it would give me a response.json, which would contain our order ID. Order ID would be order.id. Okay, so hopefully it should work, and before that I should add my key ID and secret key. So I've added my Razorpay key ID and secret key in my code. So now I'm going to deploy this function to Firebase. So I'm going to type in Firebase deploy. So this would deploy our function to the Firebase functions, and it would generate us an endpoint which would provide us the order ID in the JSON format. So it would take at least 2 minutes to deploy, and I already had an existing function in here, so I would replace it, and you won't get this error if you are creating a new project. Alright, so our function is successfully deployed to our Firebase, and this is the endpoint URL, and I'm going to just run it and check if the order ID is coming back to me or not. And I'm going to add a query here. Query starts with a question mark, and I named the query with AMT, and it would be, let's say, 1000. Let's see if we are getting order ID back or not. So it's throwing me an error, and it's telling me that API key provided has been expired. Okay, so I've just got to change my API key, and after that I'll reconnect. So after connecting my API keys, I'm getting an order ID with the key order ID. So now we can begin with our Android app. So I'm just going to create a simple layout which would contain an edit text and text. first would be a text view. And text would be Razopay. And I'm just going to increase the text size to 20 sp. Now I'm going to add an edit text. The vertical bias would be around 0.3, and let's adjust the width so it's okay. So width looks good. Now I'm just going to add a button, and text would be pay now. This would be below the edit text. And I can add another text view which would show us the status of the payment. So I will not add any text right now. It would only show the text when the payment is completed. So this would be between this edit text and button. Alright, so I'm just going to give them IDs. This would be payment result text. This would be pay now button, and I'm going to refactor it from here. Pay now button. And this would be amount edit text. Okay, so before we dig into the Kotlin code, we should add some dependencies here. And first of all, I'm going to add build features. I'm going to enable the view binding. Okay, now head back to Razopay docs, and we're going to implement Razopay SDK. Okay, and we'll just make sure that we have Maven Central in our repository. Add it here. Okay, it looks good. And now I'm going to add retrofit dependencies in our Android app. Implementation retrofit. Okay, so I'm going to sync the project now. Alright, so first of all, I'm going to enable the view binding, and I'm just going to create a layer init var which would be binding, and it would be the type of activity main binding. Okay, so the binding would be activity main binding dot bind, and it would be a late translator. Sorry, it would be inflate layout inflator, and the set content view would be binding dot root. So with view binding, we do not have to call find view by id to every item. We could just simply use binding dot button, edit text, or anything. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to scroll down here, and it's saying to preload checkout, and we have to implement some classes of Razopay, and I'm going to import this and implement its member. Okay, cool. Now it's showing us to preload. Okay, okay, and I'm going to create a variable well checkout would be checkout. Okay, and we have to set a key ID checkout dot key ID. I'm just going to enter my key ID here. So this is my key ID here, and we are not using any program tools here, so I will ignore this. We have already created an order in server. Okay, so now let's do one thing. We should create retrofit package, and we are just going to call the API from retrofit and retrieve the order ID from our endpoint, and I'm just going to create a Kotlin object which would be retrofit. Okay, and I'm going to create an interface which would contain our API interface, and it would be API services. Okay, I'm going to create a function here, and it would be get order ID. And this would contain our query AMT. And we would pass on our amount in this function, which would be passed into our query, which is AMT, and this would throw us a response. And for that we need to create a model first. I'm going to create a Kotlin data class, and it would be Razopay response. I'm going to name it data class. I'm going to add my variables here, and my first variable is order ID, which will be a string, and I'm going to assume it as null because if you are getting a response there would be no order ID. And I'm just going to create another variable error. This would also be, I'm going to create another data class for error, because error throws another JSON response. For that we need to create another class. So what I'm going to do is create another data class, and it would be error response. Contain a variable description. I'm just going to take description for this. For now we don't need any error codes. It can be null, so error would be error response. I'm just going to rename this alright. So we are going to take Razopay response from up, and this would be so I'm just going to take a function name from here, and this would be our base error which we are going to use in our retrofit. So I'm just going to rename this. I renamed this class to retrofit class to avoid confusion with the retrofit class. And before moving ahead, I would like to add another dependency which I forgot to add earlier, and it would be a JSON. And I would add all the dependencies in the description, so you don't need to worry about it. And I would go back to retrofit, and I'm just going to rename it from here to retrofit class. And I'm just going to create a new function here, and it would be get retrofit, and this would return us API services class. So now I'm going to use return here, return retrofit dot builder, and I would add our base URL, which would be tillhere.net. I'm just going to paste it here, but I won't recommend you to paste your base URL here. And if you want to know how to secure your endpoints, I've created a shorts video on it. You can just watch it. I've provided a link in the description. And I would now use add converter factory, would be JSON converter factory, and why is it not showing up, I don't know. And I would use build, and it would create API services class.java. Alright, now I just need to fix this JSON converter factory. I'm just going to use a dependency here. The latest version. I'll sync the project. Now let's get back to retrofit class, and now I'll just have to import this. dot create. Okay, so this part is done. Now we have to come back to our main activity, and I have to implement on-click listener. We can do it without the on-click listener. I would just create a function init on-click. And we would now we'll create a new function which would call the retrofit class and get us the order API. Will get us the order ID. So I'm just going to call this function get order ID. I'll create a new function here, get order ID, and I'll pass on the amount here, and I'll just add a parameter here, and it would be amount string, or we can just globally create a variable, private variable amount, and this would be an integer. I should add late in it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is make it 0 until we have an actual amount. So now when the button is clicked, the get order ID would call retrofit class dot get retrofit dot get order ID, and I'm just gonna change this to integer. Okay, so this would be an integer, and I will pass on our amount. Alright, so the default amount is 0 initially, and I can remove this as this operator. So now I would retrieve this value in our variable, and I will create another variable here. It would be a private variable order ID, and this would be a string. Okay, so the order ID would be what I'm gonna do is create a variable response, which would be response of Razopay response, and I would add by lazy Alright, so I'm now going to add a condition here. If response is successful, our order ID would be response dot body dot order ID. Else we can show the description of the error in a toast form. Toast.makes text application context, and we would just take response dot body dot error dot description. I just gonna change it to toast dot length short. Alright. And so when the order ID is retrieved, we would call another function which would be initiate Razorpay SDK, and I'm going to create a new function. Okay, so now we have to get back to the docs again, and we have to use Razorpay's payload helper class, and I think I should just copy this whole code here, and we should ignore this because they have provided two options. One is payloader helper class and another one is JSON object. So typically payload helper class eases this process, and I'm just going to paste this code over here. I'm going to import this class. Alright, so I can change my merchant name to coder here, and this is the prefill things which would show the saved cards, and I'm going to import this JSON object class. Alright, I'm going to use my checkout variable here. Now what I'm going to do is use checkout.open with these options. So now I'm going to use checkout.open with my application context and payload helper. It's asking me to provide me JSON format. So let me check. So we can use this payload helper.getJSON. So I would use main activity so I'm just going to so we have also two members of this payment result class, and one is on success and one is on error, and we are going to use binding dot what was the name of the it was payment result dot text, and I'm going to set the text to successful, and same with this error failed. The on click the amount should be binding dot amounted text dot text to string to end. I'm just gonna remove this till by lazy, and I'm gonna use coroutine scope dispatches dot input output not launch, and I'm gonna write response would be equals to retrofit class dot get retrofit dot get order ID, and the amount would be And now I'm gonna move this whole block to this coroutines block. Let's make it null. I'm gonna change this to fire. To add not null here, and I have to call this function from the UI thread, and so I would use run on UI thread and paste it here, and toast would be also on UI thread. Okay, so now let's try running the app again, and before that we need to change here the amount, and the order ID would be order ID, which is created here. So now what I'm gonna do is remove all these optional things and just keep the important things here, and I will just remove all these. So these are enough, and that other things are for the customization purposes. And one thing I need to change is change the amount multiplied by 100 so that we get the correct amount. Now I'll just run the app again. Enter the amount 555. So now I will just try out UPI with success@Razorpay. This is just for demonstration purposes, and this would not work in when your Razorpay payment keys are live. So this is a success screen, and now it will redirect me automatically. And I accidentally pressed pay now buttons 2 times, so I'm gonna just press it again. Enter this amount 230. Let's try with success again. And now it shows success. And now we can see our text view is now set to successful. Now let's try failure payments, and now this time let's use let's try out card this time. Can't paste it here. And now it will redirect us to the bank page. Now it's on. Now let's click on failure this time, and it shows payment failed. Let's go back and see the status, and it will show us failed. So this was it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to